You people are getting too comfortable walking through the front lobby. The sentence didn't echo. It cut, sharp and deliberate, across the polished marble and quiet conversations of the Horizon Grand. Heads turned, not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel the shift. Naomi Carter stood still, the man's car keys resting in her palm like something misplaced, like something that didn't belong to her. But neither did his assumption. She wore a fitted black tee, dark jeans, sneakers that made no sound on the floor that she owned, though no one in that moment seemed to know it. Her posture was calm, almost detached, like she'd stepped into a scene she had already seen before. Daniel Brooks, mid-40s, expensive watch, confidence that leaned too far into entitlement, didn't look at her twice. He had already decided who she was. Well, he added, impatience curling into his tone. Don't just stand there. Naomi didn't move. Not yet. The air tightened, subtle but real, like a held breath stretching too long. A woman near the concierge desk glanced over her shoulder. A bellman paused mid-step, and behind the front desk, Emily Ross, intern badge still stiff and new, looked up from her screen, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Something didn't add up. Naomi turned the keys slowly in her hand, metal catching the chandelier light. Then she placed them, carefully, deliberately, back onto the counter beside her. No words, just action. That's when the manager appeared. Gregory Vance, mid-50s, pressed suit, controlled smile, the kind that felt rehearsed. He approached with purpose, scanning Naomi from head to toe, not seeing her, only reading her. Staff shouldn't be in the front lobby during peak hours, he said, voice low but firm enough to carry. A few guests shifted, now openly watching. Naomi met his gaze. Calm, unshaken. I'm exactly where I need to be, she said. Not loud, not defensive, just true. Gregory's smile tightened. Then you'll need to step aside. Guests first. The word guests hung in the air like a line drawn. Emily's fingers hovered over her keyboard. She had seen the name Carter earlier. VIP. Executive clearance. But the woman standing there didn't match what they expected. Or maybe she did, and that was the problem. Daniel scoffed softly, picking up his phone like the moment bored him now. Unbelievable, he muttered. This is what happens when standards drop. Naomi didn't look at him. Didn't need to. She had heard versions of that sentence before. Different cities, different faces, same meaning. The lobby lights reflected in her eyes, steady, unreadable. Then Gregory stepped closer. Not aggressive, not loud, just enough to signal control. Ma'am, he said, tone sharpening at the edges. I'm going to need you to move. Now. And that was the moment the room shifted again. Not louder, not faster, just deeper, like something unseen had just entered the space. Naomi exhaled once, slow. Her hand slipped into her pocket, pulling out her phone with a motion so smooth it barely registered. Somewhere far from that lobby, systems waited. Names meant something. Access meant everything. And silence was about to speak. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi Carter. She looked at Gregory, then at the room, then back at the man who had already decided her place. Go ahead, she said quietly. Tell me again where I belong. Gregory did not repeat himself. He did not need to. Men like him were used to being understood the first time. His silence now carried more weight than his words had seconds ago, as if the entire lobby had quietly agreed that Naomi Carter was the problem to be removed. This is not a discussion, he said finally, his tone flattening into policy. We have standards here. Naomi's gaze did not shift. Standards. That word again. It always sounded clean when they said it, almost respectable, as if it could hide everything underneath. Behind the desk, Emily swallowed hard, her eyes flicking between Naomi and the reservation system still glowing on her screen. Carter. Penthouse. Executive override. The system did not hesitate. It never did. Only people did. Sir. Emily started, her voice softer than she wanted. I think there might be a... Gregory cut her off without looking. Not now. 2 words. Dismissive. Final. The kind that trained people to stay quiet. Emily's lips pressed together, but she did not look away this time. She kept watching Naomi, trying to reconcile what she saw with what she knew. Across the lobby, Daniel exhaled loudly, already losing patience with a moment that was taking too long. "This is ridiculous," he said, stepping closer again, his voice louder now, inviting attention. "I asked for service, not a standoff." A few guests nodded, not because they agreed, but because it was easier than questioning the scene unfolding in front of them. Naomi turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge him. "Service," she repeated, calm, almost thoughtful. "That is what you think this is." Daniel smirked, missing the weight behind her words. "That is exactly what it is." Naomi's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes did. A quiet shift, the kind that does not announce itself, but changes everything. Gregory stepped closer again, lowering his voice as if proximity would make his authority feel more personal. "You are creating discomfort for our guests," he said. "And that ends now." Naomi glanced around the lobby, slow and deliberate. The guests were watching. The staff was watching. Even the silence was watching. "No," she said softly. "This started long before I said a word." The statement lingered, unanswered. Emily's fingers hovered again, this time not over the keyboard, but over the phone in her pocket. Something about this felt wrong in a way that training manuals never prepared her for. Not loud wrong. Not obvious. Just undeniable. Gregory straightened, patience thinning. "Security will escort you out if necessary," he said, signaling toward the side entrance with a small motion of his hand. It was subtle, but it was enough. A uniformed guard near the hallway shifted his stance, preparing to step forward. Naomi saw it. Of course she did. She had seen this pattern before. Not just once. Not just twice. Enough times to recognize every step before it happened. She took a single breath, slow and measured, then looked back at Gregory. With a calm that did not match the situation. "You are about to make a very expensive mistake," she said. No threat. No raised voice. Just certainty. Daniel laughed under his breath. "You hear that?" he muttered to no one in particular. Now she is making threats. But Naomi was not looking at him anymore. Her attention had shifted inward for a fraction of a second, like a door opening somewhere deeper. A memory. Different city. Different lobby. Same look on someone else's face. Same word. Standards. She had been younger then. Less patient. Less prepared. But not anymore. Her phone rested in her hand now, screen dark but ready. Somewhere beyond that room, systems were still quiet, waiting for a signal. Emily took a step out from behind the desk before she could stop herself. "Sir," she said again, this time louder, her voice cutting through the tension just enough to be heard. Gregory turned sharply. "What is it?" She hesitated for half a second, then said it anyway. "Her name is in the system." Silence followed. Not the quiet from before. This one was heavier, more dangerous, because now there was doubt. The words did not disappear after Emily said them. They stayed in the air, heavy and undeniable. "Her name is in the system." Gregory did not respond immediately, and that hesitation was enough to shift something in the room. Not completely, not yet, but enough for people to start questioning what they thought they understood. He turned slowly toward Emily, his expression tightening, not confused but irritated, like she had broken a script he expected everyone to follow. "Then you are looking at the wrong profile," he said, his voice controlled, measured, as if certainty could override fact. Emily shook her head, just slightly, but this time she did not back down. "No, sir. It is confirmed. Naomi Carter. Penthouse suite. Executive clearance." Each word landed like a quiet correction. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise. Daniel let out a short laugh, dismissive, almost bored. "Anyone can put a name in a system," he said, waving a hand like the entire conversation was beneath him. "That does not mean anything." Naomi finally looked at him again, her gaze steady, almost clinical. "It means more than assumptions," she said. Gregory exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath people take when they are losing control but refuse to admit it. He stepped closer to the desk, glancing at the screen for the first time, but only for a second, like looking too long might force him to accept something he was not ready to face. Then he straightened again. "We verify identity, not names," he said, doubling down, pulling policy around him like armor. "And right now, nothing about this checks out." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Nothing about me checks out," she repeated, not asking, just reflecting the words back to him. The lobby was no longer pretending to be normal. Conversations had stopped. Phones were subtly raised. Eyes moved between Naomi, Gregory, and Emily, waiting for something to break. The guard near the hallway took another step forward, slower this time, less certain, as if even he could feel the shift beneath his feet. Emily swallowed again, then turned the monitor slightly, enough for Gregory to see clearly. "The system does not hesitate," she said quietly. "It does not guess." Gregory's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a moment, there was a crack. Small, barely visible, but real. Naomi saw it. She had seen that look before too. The moment when certainty starts to slip, but pride holds it together just long enough to make things worse. Daniel crossed his arms, impatience turning into irritation. "Are we really doing this?" he said, louder now. "Over someone who clearly does not belong here." Naomi's eyes moved back to him, and this time there was something sharper in them. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. "You keep saying that," she said. "Like it becomes true every time you repeat it." The words did not rise. They did not need to. They landed exactly where they were meant to. Gregory stepped in again, trying to reclaim the moment. "Enough," he said, his voice firmer now, louder, pulling authority back into the space. "We are not debating this in the middle of the lobby." Naomi nodded once, slow, almost thoughtful. "You are right," she said. "You are not debating anything." Her phone screen lit up in her hand. Soft glow against her fingers. Somewhere far beyond that room, something responded. Not loudly, not visibly, but it moved. A system waking up. A chain reaction beginning. Emily noticed it. The subtle shift. The quiet confidence that did not match someone being removed. Gregory did not. Not yet. He gestured again toward the guard. "Escort her out," he said. This time, it was not a suggestion. The guard hesitated for half a second, then started forward. Naomi did not step back. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked at Gregory, then at the room, then back at him. "You still have time," she said quietly. And for the first time, it did not sound like a warning. It sounded like a fact. The guard slowed as he approached, not because he had been told to, but because something in the room no longer felt certain. His steps were measured now, cautious, like he was walking into a situation that no longer had clear lines. Naomi did not move. She stood exactly where she had been, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, as if the entire moment had already played out in her mind, and this was just the part where everyone else caught up. Gregory watched the guard close the distance, his posture rigid, holding on to control the only way he knew how, by pushing forward. "Let us keep this professional," he said, though the word professional now sounded thin, stretched too far over something it could not fully cover. Naomi's phone vibrated once in her hand. Subtle, almost silent, but she felt it, and so did something deeper than the moment in front of her. A signal received, a system acknowledged. She did not look down at the screen. She did not need to. Instead, she lifted her gaze slightly, scanning the room again. The lobby had changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, but the certainty that once filled it had started to fracture. A man near the lounge area lowered his newspaper without realizing it. A woman near the elevators leaned just a little closer. Even Daniel, who had been so sure just moments ago, shifted his weight, his confidence no longer as effortless as before. "This is taking too long," he said, his voice sharper now, like he needed the situation to resolve before it slipped any further. Naomi turned her head just enough to acknowledge him. "Some things take exactly as long as they need to," she replied. Calm, precise, unmoved. The guard stopped a few feet in front of her. Close enough to act. Close enough to hesitate. "Ma'am," he began, his voice not as firm as Gregory's had been. "I am going to need you to step outside with me." It was not a command. Not fully. There was space in it. Space for her to comply. Or not. Naomi held his gaze for a moment, reading him the way she had read rooms her entire life. He was not the problem. He was the position. "You are doing your job," she said quietly. "I understand that." The guard blinked, just once, caught off guard by the absence of resistance. Gregory stepped forward again, impatience breaking through the cracks. "Then do it," he said, directing the moment back into motion. "Escort her out." Naomi's expression did not change, but something settled into place behind her eyes. A decision already made. A line already crossed. "You keep saying that like I am the one who does not belong," she said, her voice still even, still controlled. Gregory opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Naomi's phone vibrated again. This time longer. Not a single signal. A sequence. Confirmation. The system was no longer waiting. It was active. Emily saw it. The way Naomi's posture shifted just slightly, not outwardly, but internally, like a switch had been flipped somewhere no one else could see. She took another step forward, her voice stronger now, no longer asking for permission. "Sir, something just updated in the system," she said. Gregory turned sharply, frustration now fully visible. "What now?" Emily swallowed, then read directly from the screen, her voice steady despite the tension building around her. "Ownership access level has been elevated. Corporate override just triggered." The words landed differently than before. Heavier. More final. The guard paused. Completely this time. Daniel frowned, confusion replacing irritation. "What does that even mean?" he asked, though the question was not directed at anyone specific. Naomi finally looked down at her phone, just for a second, just long enough to confirm what she already knew. Then she slipped it back into her pocket and lifted her eyes to meet Gregory's again. "It means," she said softly, "you should have listened when you still had the chance." And this time, the room did not feel like it was watching anymore. It felt like it was waiting. The word waiting did not sit quietly in the room. It stretched, it pressed, it forced everyone inside that lobby to feel something they could not yet explain. Gregory did not move right away, but the confidence that once anchored his posture had begun to thin. "Override does not change protocol," he said, though his voice no longer carried the same weight it had minutes ago. It sounded practiced now, repeated, like something he needed to believe more than anyone else. Emily's eyes stayed on the screen, scanning quickly, her breath catching as more lines updated in real time. "This is not just an override," she said, quieter this time, but clearer. "This is full ownership access." The words did not echo. They landed. Daniel shifted again, his expression tightening as he looked between Naomi and the desk. "What is she talking about?" he asked, but no one answered him immediately. Because for the first time, the answer felt close. Too close. Naomi stepped forward just slightly, not toward anyone, but into the center of the moment itself. The movement was small, almost unnoticeable, but it changed the balance of the room. The guard took a step back without thinking, his role no longer clear. Gregory noticed it. Of course he did. And that was when the frustration cracked into something sharper. "Enough of this," he said, his voice rising just enough to try and pull control back into his hands. "Ma'am, if you do not leave voluntarily, we will escalate this situation." Naomi looked at him, steady, unwavering, and for a brief second, there was silence between them that felt heavier than anything said so far. "You already escalated it," she replied. No emotion, no hesitation, just truth. The words settled into Gregory's expression, and for the first time, doubt showed clearly. Not fully, not openly, but enough. Emily turned the monitor further now, no longer asking permission, her voice gaining strength as she read the newest update. "Corporate has logged the incident," she said. Time-stamped. "Full audio monitoring just activated." A ripple moved through the lobby. Subtle, but real. A man near the seating area lowered his phone slowly, realizing this was no longer just a moment to watch. It was something else now. Something official. Daniel's confidence cracked next. "Audio monitoring," he repeated, his tone shifting from dismissive to uneasy. "You are recording this?" Naomi did not look at him. "No," she said calmly. "They are." Gregory's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking toward the security camera in the corner for the first time since this began. It had always been there. It always watched. But now it meant something different. The system was not just present. It was active, and it was listening. Naomi let the silence stretch just long enough for that realization to settle into everyone in the room. Then she spoke again, her voice still low, still controlled, but carrying something heavier now. "Every word," she said. "Every assumption. Every decision." Emily's screen refreshed again, and this time her breath caught audibly. She looked up, eyes wide, not with fear, but with clarity. "They are requesting executive confirmation," she said. Gregory blinked. "For what?" Emily swallowed. "For disciplinary action." The words hit harder than anything before. Because now, this was no longer about removing someone from a lobby. This was about consequences. Daniel took a small step back, instinctively distancing himself from the center of the situation he had helped create. "This is insane," he muttered, though the certainty was gone from his voice. Naomi finally turned her head toward him fully, her gaze sharp now, not angry, but precise. "No," she said. "This is accurate." The room felt different now. Not tense, not uncertain, just aware. Gregory looked at Naomi again, really looked this time, as if trying to find something he had missed. But it was too late for that. Whatever decision needed to be made had already been made somewhere beyond his control. Naomi reached into her pocket again, pulling out her phone. Not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. She glanced at the screen for a brief second, then lifted her eyes back to Gregory. "You still think I do not belong here," she said quietly. It was not a question. It did not need an answer, because the next moment was already coming, and everyone in that lobby could feel it. Gregory did not answer her question, not because he did not want to, but because for the first time, he did not know how. The certainty that had carried him through every decision in that lobby had begun to dissolve, piece by piece, replaced by something unfamiliar. Exposure. He straightened his jacket anyway, a reflex more than a strategy, and forced his voice back into place. "This does not change anything," he said, though it clearly had. "We follow procedure." Naomi watched him for a moment, not interrupting, not correcting, just observing the way he held on to something that was already slipping away. "Procedure," she repeated softly, as if testing the weight of the word. Then she took one slow step closer, not aggressive, not confrontational, just enough to close the distance between assumption and reality. "You have been using that word since I walked in," she continued. "But procedure only works when it is applied equally." The sentence did not rise. It settled, and in that stillness, it became impossible to ignore. Emily's screen refreshed again, this time with a soft tone that cut through the silence more sharply than any raised voice. She looked down, then up, her expression shifting from uncertainty to something much clearer. "Corporate is requesting direct confirmation," she said, her voice steady now. "They want verbal authorization." Gregory turned toward her quickly. "From who?" he asked, but the answer was already standing in front of him. Naomi did not rush. She did not react like someone being handed power. She had been holding it the entire time. She lifted her phone again, the screen lighting her face for just a second, then placed it flat against the counter beside her. "You asked who I am," she said, her eyes locking onto Gregory's. "You had multiple chances to find out." The lobby felt smaller now, not physically, but in presence. Every movement, every breath seemed contained within the moment unfolding at the front desk. Daniel did not speak this time. He just watched, his earlier confidence replaced by something quieter, something more cautious. Naomi's voice remained calm, but there was something sharper underneath it now, something undeniable. "My name is Naomi Carter," she said. No pause, no build-up, just truth. Gregory blinked, the name landing differently this time, no longer just a line in a system. "I am the majority owner of this property," she continued. The words did not need emphasis. They carried their own weight. Emily's screen confirmed it instantly, the system aligning with what had just been spoken out loud. The guard stepped back fully now, removing himself from a role that no longer applied. Daniel's posture shifted again, his arms dropping slightly as the realization reached him in pieces. Naomi did not look at him. This moment was not about him. It was never about him. She kept her focus on Gregory, the man who had spoken the loudest, decided the fastest, and questioned the least. 8 minutes ago, she said quietly, you told me I did not belong in this lobby. Gregory's lips parted, but no words came out. Not yet. Not fast enough. Naomi let the silence stretch just long enough for the weight of that statement to settle into the room. Then she turned slightly toward Emily. You said they needed confirmation, she said. Emily nodded once, almost instinctively. Naomi picked up her phone again, her movements still precise, still controlled. This is Naomi Carter, she said into the device, her voice clear, steady, leaving no room for interpretation. Proceed with full disciplinary authorization. The response on the other end was immediate, though unheard by anyone else. But the system reacted. Screens updated. Access shifted. The invisible structure behind the hotel began to move in real time. Emily's monitor flickered with new commands, new statuses, new realities. Gregory saw it. This time, he could not look away. Naomi lowered the phone slowly, placing it back into her pocket as if nothing about this required urgency. Then she looked at him one last time, her expression unchanged, her voice as calm as it had been from the beginning. "Now," she said, "let us talk about procedure." The word procedure did not sound the same anymore. Not after what had just been said. Not after who had said it. It no longer felt like a shield. It felt like evidence. Gregory stood there, the space around him no longer solid, his authority no longer automatic. He glanced at the screen again, this time longer, this time unable to look away as line after line updated in real time. Access revoked. Credentials suspended. Internal audit flagged. The words were not loud, but they were final. This has to be a mistake," he said, though the sentence lacked conviction before it even finished. Naomi did not respond immediately. She let him sit in it, the same way she had been made to sit in assumptions just minutes earlier. Around them, the lobby had gone completely still. No whispers now. No movement. Just attention. Focused. Unavoidable. Emily's hands hovered over the keyboard, but she was no longer searching. She was witnessing. "It is not a mistake," she said quietly, reading from the screen without being asked. "System confirmation is locked." Daniel shifted again, his earlier confidence now replaced with something much closer to concern. "Wait," he said, stepping forward slightly. "What does that mean for everyone here?" His voice trailed off, as if he already knew the answer but hoped someone would say something different. Naomi turned her head toward him, her expression unchanged, her tone still calm. "It means actions have consequences," she said. "No anger. No satisfaction. Just clarity." The guard, who had once been ready to escort her out, now stood at a distance, his posture neutral, his role erased as quickly as it had been assigned. He looked between Gregory and Naomi, then down at the floor, as if understanding exactly when to step out of something that no longer involved him. Gregory finally looked back at Naomi, really looked this time, not at her clothes, not at her presence, but at her position. And the realization, when it landed, did not come loudly. It came quietly, the kind that settles in the chest and does not leave. "You could have said something," he muttered, almost to himself. Naomi's eyes sharpened slightly, not in anger, but in precision. "I did," she replied. "You chose not to hear it." The words landed clean. No excess. No explanation needed. Emily's screen updated again, a new notification flashing across the top. She inhaled sharply, then spoke, her voice steady but unmistakably changed. "Termination orders have been processed," she said. The word termination did not echo, but it carried through the room like a shift in gravity. Gregory's posture faltered for the first time, just slightly, but enough. "Effective immediately," Emily added, her eyes moving between the screen and the man who had just lost everything he thought he controlled. Daniel took a full step back now, distancing himself completely, his earlier involvement shrinking in real time. "I did not know," he said quickly, the words coming out too fast, too late. Naomi did not respond to him. This was never about what he knew. It was about what he assumed. She kept her attention on Gregory, her voice steady, her presence unchanged. "You built your decisions on appearance," she said, "and you called it policy." Gregory did not argue this time. He could not. The system had already spoken for him. The screen had already confirmed what he refused to see. Naomi let the silence stretch one last time, not for effect, but for understanding. Then she took a small step back, reclaiming the space that had always been hers. "This lobby," she said quietly, "was never the problem." She paused, just long enough for the next words to land exactly where they needed to. "The way you chose to see people in it was." And this time, no one spoke. Because there was nothing left to misunderstand. The silence did not break all at once. It shifted, slowly, like something heavy being lifted off the room, but leaving a weight behind. Gregory stood there, no longer the center of authority, just a man in a suit that suddenly looked too formal for a role he no longer held. His badge, clipped neatly to his jacket, gave a soft tone as it deactivated, a small sound that carried farther than expected. He looked down at it, then back up, as if hoping the room would reset itself, as if the last few minutes could be undone by disbelief alone. But nothing moved backward. Emily watched the screen, her posture straighter now, not because she had gained power, but because she understood it differently. "Access fully revoked," she said quietly, more to confirm than to announce. Naomi did not react. She had already moved past the moment that everyone else was still processing. Daniel cleared his throat, the sound awkward in the stillness, his earlier confidence now replaced with something cautious, almost rehearsed. "Look," he began, stepping forward just slightly. "I did not mean anything by it. It was just a misunderstanding." The word misunderstanding hovered, fragile, insufficient. Naomi turned toward him slowly, her gaze steady, not hostile, just precise. "A misunderstanding happens when both sides are unclear," she said. This was not that. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again, the explanation he thought he had dissolving before it could form. Around them, a few guests lowered their phones, not because the moment was over, but because it had already said everything it needed to say. The guard moved further back, positioning himself near the wall, no longer part of the scene, just another witness to it. Naomi shifted her attention back to Emily, her tone softening just slightly. "What is your name?" she asked. "Emily," she replied quickly. Naomi nodded once. "You spoke up when it mattered," she said. No praise, no dramatics, just acknowledgement. And somehow, that carried more weight than anything else in the room. Emily straightened a little more, not out of pride, but out of clarity. She understood what she had just done, and more importantly, why it mattered. Naomi then looked back across the lobby, taking in the space with a calm that now felt entirely different from before. This was not tension anymore. This was resolution. "There will be a full review," she said, her voice carrying just enough to reach the edges of the room. Not just of actions, but of patterns. The word patterns lingered. It was not about one moment. It never was. Gregory finally spoke again, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier authority. "I have worked here for 12 years, he said, as if time alone could argue for him. Naomi met his gaze, unshaken. "And in those 12 years, she replied, "you had countless chances to get it right." There was no anger in her tone, just finality. Emily's screen updated again, a new set of instructions appearing, but this time they did not feel like disruption. They felt like structure being corrected. Naomi took a small breath, then stepped slightly to the side, no longer positioned as someone being confronted, but as someone who had already resolved what needed to be resolved. The lobby lights reflected off the marble floor, unchanged, steady, as if nothing had happened at all. But everything had. Naomi glanced once more at the front desk, then toward the entrance, her voice calm, composed, and unmistakably clear. "The difference," she said, "was never about where I stood." She paused, just long enough for the next line to settle into everyone listening. "It was about how you chose to see me standing there." And this time, no one looked away. The lobby did not return to normal. It settled into something else entirely. Not tension, not chaos, but awareness that could not be undone. People shifted, not physically at first, but in the way they held themselves, in the way they looked at Naomi now compared to just minutes ago. The difference was not subtle. It was complete. Emily stepped away from the screen for the first time, her movements careful, almost deliberate, as if she understood she was stepping into a new role without being told. "Corporate has acknowledged full execution," she said, her voice steady, no longer uncertain. "Transition team is being dispatched." Naomi nodded once, acknowledging the process without needing to see it. She had built systems like this. She knew exactly how they moved. Gregory remained still, his presence fading not because he had physically moved, but because the authority that once defined him was gone. He looked around the lobby as if searching for something to hold on to, but there was nothing left that responded to him. Not the staff, not the space, not even the silence. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice lower, no longer commanding, just asking. Naomi did not answer immediately. She let the question exist, the same way she had been made to stand inside assumptions earlier. Then she looked at him, calm and clear. "Now," she said, "the truth gets documented." The word documented carried weight. It meant this was not a moment that disappeared when people walked away. It meant it stayed. Emily glanced back at the screen, confirming what Naomi had already stated. "Full incident report is being compiled," she added, "including verbal interactions." Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand along the back of his neck, his posture no longer confident, no longer certain. "Look," he said again, trying to find ground that no longer existed. "I think we are making this bigger than it needs to be." Naomi turned toward him, her gaze steady, not harsh, just exact. It was already big, she said. You just did not notice until it affected you. Daniel had no response to that. None that held. Around them, a few guests exchanged glances, subtle nods passing between strangers who had just witnessed something they would not forget. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. The guard, still near the wall, adjusted his stance again, but this time it was not uncertainty. It was understanding. He knew exactly where he stood now, and more importantly, where he did not. Naomi stepped forward slightly, her presence no longer questioned, no longer challenged, just recognized. This hotel will continue to operate, she said, her voice carrying just enough to reach the edges of the room. But not like this. The words were not loud, but they were final. Emily nodded almost instinctively, already moving to align the system with what had just been said. She was not guessing anymore. She was following direction. Gregory lowered his gaze briefly, the realization settling fully now. I thought I was protecting standards, he said quietly. Naomi's expression did not change. You were protecting assumptions, she replied. Clean, direct, unavoidable. The difference between the two hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Naomi turned slightly, looking across the lobby one more time, taking in the space that had never truly belonged to anyone but her, even when others believed otherwise. The lighting, the design, the quiet luxury of the room remained the same, but the meaning behind it had shifted completely. She took a breath, steady and controlled, then spoke one last time, not to Gregory, not to Daniel, but to the room itself. Respect is not a uniform, she said. It is not a title, and it is not something you decide based on who you think someone is. She paused, letting the words settle exactly where they needed to. Then she finished, her voice calm, grounded, and undeniable. It is something you either give or reveal that you never had. And in that moment, the lesson was no longer hers to carry. It belonged to everyone who had witnessed it. No one rushed to leave. That was the first thing that changed. In any other moment, the lobby would have returned to motion, to noise, to the quiet rhythm of people passing through without noticing each other. But not this time. This time, people stayed. Not out of curiosity anymore, but out of understanding that something had just been revealed, and leaving too quickly would mean missing what came after. Naomi stood at the center of it all, not elevated, not surrounded, just present in a way that made everything else reorganize around her. Emily moved with purpose now, no hesitation in her steps, as she began following the new directives appearing on her screen. Transition protocols are active, she said, her voice steady, professional, but different. There was clarity in it now. Ownership of her role. Interim management access has been reassigned. Gregory heard it. Of course he did. Each word landed like confirmation of something he could no longer deny. He adjusted his stance slightly, as if trying to find balance in a position that no longer existed. So that is it, he said quietly. After all these years. Naomi turned toward him, her expression unchanged, not cold, not sympathetic, just grounded in reality. It was not about the years, she replied. It was about the choices made during them. The distinction settled heavily between them. Daniel, still lingering at the edge of the moment, glanced around as if searching for someone to agree with him, someone to soften what had happened. But there was no one. The room had already decided where it stood. I think everyone just overreacted, he said finally, though even he sounded unsure of it now. Naomi looked at him, not dismissing him, but not validating him either. What you call overreaction, she said, is what happens when something ignored for too long finally gets addressed. He looked away first. Around them, the guests had changed. Some stood straighter. Some avoided eye contact. Some simply watched with a quiet recognition that went beyond the moment itself. Naomi took a slow step toward the front desk, her hand resting lightly on the marble surface, feeling the cool solidity of something she had built, something that had been tested and now redefined. This place was designed to welcome people, she said, her voice calm, measured. Not to measure them. Emily glanced up at her, absorbing the words not as instruction, but as principle. Understood, she said, almost instinctively. Naomi nodded once, then looked back across the lobby. The lighting, the structure, the stillness of the space all remained intact, but the energy had shifted into something more honest. Gregory exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling fully now. "I thought I knew how to run this place," he said, not defensive, not arguing, just stating what he had believed. Naomi met his gaze. "You knew how to maintain it," she said. "That is not the same as leading it." The difference was clear, unavoidable, final. Emily's screen updated again, but this time the changes felt aligned, not disruptive. A new structure taking shape where the old one had failed. Naomi straightened, her posture unchanged from the moment she walked in, but now fully recognized for what it had always been. "This is not about removal," she said, her voice steady. "It is about correction." She paused, letting the words settle into the space. Then she added, just as calmly, "And correction does not ask for permission." No one responded. No one interrupted, because there was nothing left to challenge. Naomi stepped back slightly, no longer needing to stand at the center, because the center had already shifted. And in that quiet, undeniable stillness, the lobby did not just return to order. It became something better than what it had been before. The lobby no longer felt like a place people passed through. It felt like a place people would remember. Conversations resumed, but softer now, more aware, as if everyone understood that something larger than a single moment had just taken place. Naomi stood near the front desk, not directing attention, not demanding it, yet it remained on her. Not because she asked for it, but because she had earned it long before anyone in that room realized who she was. Emily moved with quiet efficiency, her hands no longer hovering, her decisions no longer hesitant. "Interim leadership confirmation has been finalized," she said, her voice clear, steady, grounded. "Operations will continue under revised supervision." Naomi nodded once, acknowledging the transition without needing to oversee every detail. That was the difference. She did not control the room by force. She shaped it by presence. Gregory remained where he was, but the space around him had changed completely. It no longer responded to him. It no longer adjusted for him. For the first time in years, he stood inside a system that no longer recognized his authority. He looked at Naomi again, not with resistance, but with something closer to realization. "I thought I understood people," he said quietly. Naomi met his gaze, not dismissing him, not agreeing with him, simply meeting him where he stood. "You understood patterns," she said, "but you never questioned where those patterns came from." The words settled deeper than anything before, because they were not just about him. They were about everything that led to that moment. Daniel shifted again, but this time he did not step forward. He stayed back, observing, his role in the situation shrinking into something quieter, something reflective. He looked at Naomi, then at the space around him, then down briefly, as if realizing that the moment had never been about him, even though he had placed himself at the center of it. Earlier, Naomi turned slightly, her attention moving beyond individuals now, toward the environment itself. "This place will not just change policy," she said, her voice carrying with calm authority. "It will change perspective." Emily looked up from the screen, absorbing the statement not as instruction, but as direction. "Understood," she said again, more firmly this time. Naomi stepped away from the desk, her movement smooth, unhurried, as if she had always been moving at a pace the room had just caught up to. She walked a few steps across the marble floor, her reflection steady beneath her, then stopped and turned back once more. Not to reclaim anything, not to reinforce anything, just to make one final point clear. "Power does not announce itself," she said. "It reveals itself." The words settled into the room with a quiet certainty that no one could challenge. Gregory lowered his gaze, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. Emily stood taller, not out of pride, but out of clarity. And the rest of the room remained still, not out of tension, but out of recognition. Naomi held the moment for just a second longer, then turned toward the elevator, her steps measured, composed, and complete. The doors opened without delay. She stepped inside, not looking back, not needing to, because everything that needed to be seen had already been revealed. And as the doors closed, the lobby did not return to what it was. It moved forward into what it had just been shown it could become. The elevator doors closed with a soft, controlled motion, sealing Naomi inside a space that felt quieter than the lobby she had just left behind. For a brief moment, there was no one watching her, no one questioning her, no one trying to define her place. Just silence. Real silence. The kind that allowed memory to surface without interruption. She stood still, eyes forward, but her mind moved elsewhere. Years earlier, a different lobby, smaller, less polished, but carrying the same energy. She had walked in then with confidence she had not yet learned how to protect. The receptionist had looked at her the same way Gregory had, not seeing her, measuring her, deciding before asking. Service in trance is around the corner, they had said back then. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain. And she had left, not because she believed them, but because she had not yet built the system that could answer them. The elevator hummed softly as it moved upward, floor numbers lighting one by one, steady and predictable. But nothing about her path had ever been predictable. She had built it through moments like that one. Moments where silence was mistaken for weakness, where patience was mistaken for permission. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself back in the present. The doors opened again to the penthouse level, the space above the lobby that very few people ever saw. It was quiet, expansive, controlled. Just like her. Naomi stepped out, her pace unchanged, her posture the same as it had been from the beginning. Business. The ability to stand in a moment like that and let truth carry itself. Her phone vibrated once more. A message. Confirmation. All actions completed. Full compliance initiated. She read it briefly, then locked the screen, placing the phone down on the table beside her. No reaction. No celebration. Just completion. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere continued to shift into something steadier, more intentional. The system had not just corrected a moment. It had exposed a pattern. And once seen, it could not be unseen. Naomi looked out over the city one last time, her reflection faint in the glass, calm and unwavering. It was never about proving who I was, she said quietly, to no one and to everything at once. She paused, letting the thought settle fully before finishing. It was about revealing who they chose to be. And in that stillness, the story did not end. It settled into something deeper, something lasting. Morning did not announce itself loudly at the horizon grand. It eased in through the glass walls, light stretching across the marble floor, touching every corner of the lobby that had changed the day before. But the real shift was not in the light. It was in the way people moved within it. Emily stood behind the desk again, this time not as someone waiting for direction, but as someone who understood what direction meant. Her posture was steady, her voice clear as she greeted each guest with something that had not been there before. Not just professionalism. Intention. The staff beside her followed that tone, not because they were told to, but because they had seen what happened when it was missing. Systems had been updated overnight. Policies rewritten. But more than that, awareness had taken root. And that was something no manual could enforce. Gregory did not return. His absence was not announced, but it was felt. Not as a loss, but as a correction. Daniel never came back either. Whatever confidence had carried him into that lobby had been left behind at the door the moment he realized it did not belong to him. Naomi stood once more at the edge of the upper floor, looking down at the space that now reflected what it was always meant to be. Not perfect, but honest. Her phone remained silent now. No alerts. No escalations. Just stillness. The kind that follows when everything that needed to be said has already been spoken. She turned slightly, her reflection catching in the glass. Calm, composed, unchanged. Because she had never needed to change. Only the room had. Down below, a guest approached the desk, dressed simply, carrying nothing that signaled status. Emily greeted them the same way she would greet anyone. No hesitation. No assumption. Just respect. Naomi watched for a moment, then nodded to herself, not in approval, but in recognition. This was what it looked like when something was corrected at its root. Not louder, not stricter, just better. She took a step back from the window, her presence no longer required to hold the space together. It could stand on its own now. That was the difference between control and leadership. One demands attention, the other builds something that does not need it. Naomi walked toward the elevator again, her steps steady, unhurried, the same as they had always been. But now, no one questioned where she belonged. And no one needed to. As the doors opened, she paused for just a moment, not looking back at the lobby, but letting the final thought settle into place. I did not need to prove anything, she said quietly, her voice calm, certain. Then she added, just as clearly, I became the proof. The doors closed. And this time, the story did not follow her. It stayed behind, in every person who had witnessed it, in every decision that would now be made differently, in every moment where assumption would no longer go unchallenged. Because the truth had already done what it needed to do. It had been seen, it had been heard, and most importantly, it had been understood.